Let's be honest, the last 6 years have been insane. There's a global pandemic.
Yeah.
The economy is behaving in ways many of us have never lived through an experience like,
Mhm.
or it's too reminiscent of other periods like '08, and the economy then.
I'm not religious in the slightest, but I said to my friend as a joke, I was like, God did not put me on this earth to be the learning and development manager at Harry's. I mean, like, that is
Yeah.
not, at the end of the day, that is not my purpose. That is not the reason that I exist as a human. And whether or not you believe there needs to be a reason or a purpose or whatever, I know it's not to be a learning and development manager at Harry's.
If you're interviewing with a company that doesn't understand that there's going to be ebbs and flows in the last 6 years, run away.
Yeah.
Run away.
And with job hunting, people say, oh, it's like dating because you just have to get the one yes or whatever. Like people just apply it to dating for so many reasons. And then I've been dating more recently, and I realized that job hunting is so much like dating because of the no's. Because you have to be able to get through the no's and not let it crush you. And like somebody's just not, the job is just not right for you. It's just not. And if they're going to go off and be with somebody else, I'm going to go off and be with somebody else. And it's okay.
For all of you who are out there going, how I'm so ashamed of the last 5 years, stop blaming yourself. You didn't do anything wrong. And own that the last 5 years changed the world. And look for a company that supports your acknowledgement of that, not punishes it.
All right, we're back and we're talking all about our careers. My name is Ben.
My name is Alyssa.
And we're having a lot of fun. We're recording these chats about our just careers and how we expected them to go and how they have gone and where we found ourselves and all of that. And we are really excited to get into episode 3 of this series. We hope you're enjoying it. And we're talking about essentially like when your path doesn't go the way you expected, or when your path is non-linear, or when your path is just not what you find to be relatable to everybody else, or it's unique to you, or whatever. We want to just talk about finding the next step or being able to tell the story around your past 10 or 15 years of your career. And so I'm really excited to get into this. How about you, Alyssa?
I'm very excited. I love talking about when expectations and reality don't match.
During this series is that I will come in and I will kind of tell kind of a super broadcasty, bright, positive story about like la la la, and then it'll be your turn and you'll get really real, and I'm like, like really. And so I would love to start with you this time and just chat about really, I know we've kind of gone into our paths a little bit in the first episode, but like, where has your path delineated from what you expected, or where has it been surprising to you the most?
Yeah, I would say recently. Just to give a little bit more on my background, I started in tech about a decade ago, just over a decade ago, and I started on the front lines of support.
Mhm.
I was like many graduates during that time. I got my undergrad and my master's degree, and I couldn't get a job. I was selling shoes for a living. We also have that in common.
Yeah,
Love to sell shoes, love wearing shoes still. Um,
absolutely.
and I really needed health insurance. So a friend looked to me and said, well, why don't you come get a little bit of job experience? Because at least you can start to build your resume. So I get a support job in fintech and grew very quickly. I was managing the team I started on in just over a year. And so I think in the last 10 years, I have been a leader longer than I've been an individual contributor. I was an individual contributor for just under a year.
Yeah.
And I continue to climb that ladder. I went from support associate to supervisor to manager to director to senior director to VP, all the way up to SVP of operations in my former role. And even in this most recent job market, I was interviewing to be COO for several companies, which was a wild experience.
Yeah.
And I think to just round that out, I'm happy to share now I'm a senior manager of service delivery, which I think a lot of people look at that and go, "Wait, what happened?" And to be honest, I did what I thought I was supposed to do. I was a hard worker. I pushed and I pushed and I climbed the ladder, and all of a sudden I was, like 32, 33 years old and a senior vice president of operations, and I looked around and I said, "Is this it? Is this my ceiling?" And it wasn't that I wasn't happy in the job. Like, I got to work with incredible people. I got to be exposed to a lot of different challenges, a lot of new perspective as a senior executive at a company. And I value those lessons. But I think I looked around and I realized that I climbed this ladder so aggressively that I never had time to really understand what I wanted and what I liked. And listen, I'm never gonna lie, I am motivated, and money is nice, right?
Yeah.
As most of the world is. But I think I looked around and I said, "I don't think I'm focusing on the strengths and skills I really want to spend most of my time focused on." Right? So after that era of being an SVP of operations, even considering being a COO, starting my own business and being an entrepreneur, how did I end up in the senior manager position? A lot of it was not caring about title anymore because I had already proved to myself that I could do it. But it's a weird thing, right? Going out into the market and interviewing for positions that could be seen traditionally lower than the previous position I had to spend a lot of time reworking my resume and telling a story of why did I wanna take a step down.
Mhm.
And I air quote that because to me, it's not taking a step down, it's taking a step towards intentional choices in my life. But on paper, I understand, like, the industry can look at it a certain way.
Yeah.
The way that I pivoted and started telling my story was I got to the top. I looked around and I realized that I was so busy climbing this ladder of what I was supposed to do
Mm.
that somewhere along the way, I didn't have enough time to figure out what I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, here I am in this position trying to juggle all of these things while also trying to figure out what I wanted.
Mhm.
And what I realized I wanted was a very, very small slice of the pie that I already had. Right? So when I was given the opportunity, even though it may have not been in the form I wanted it, but when I was given the opportunity to look for a job without another one, working during my,
Right.
job hunt, right? I really put a lot of intention into figuring out, like, what did I want? I'd also spent the last year taking different courses on Coursera, which is a great website for people looking to develop their skill set,
Yeah.
earn additional certifications. I studied product management. I studied data analytics. I was taking courses from Google and IBM about large data ingestion, AI, all of this stuff until I realized what I wanted most was to be at that intersection between strategy, technology, and delivery.
Mhm.
So I found this beautiful service delivery position that allows me to oversee data analytics, planning, technology, and BPO. I've
Mhm.
also spent the last 10 years working with BPOs across the globe, and honestly, it's one of the best parts of my job. I love my global partnerships.
Mm.
I love getting to learn from people and different styles around the world. So here I was presented with this perfect little piece of the pie I had been looking for.
Yeah.
But on paper, it's not a normal path, right? A
Mm.
lot of people, I think, would perceive it as a step down. But I think going back to a lot of what we've talked about in these conversations, it's about going through that process of finding out who you are
Mhm.
and presenting that brand, resonating with that, and making choices in careers that focus on that. And I think, again, a lot of millennials and Gen Z are going through this process now, right? They don't want to work to live, or they don't want to live for their job. They want to work and live their lives,
Yeah.
right? So I think that was the other part of it. I had become this SVP person, and I could do it and it was intoxicating, but at what cost, you know? I wanted to be a lot more present in my life, and I've found just in the last 6 months of learning this, growing through this, I am a lot more present in my life. I'm a lot more present with my community and my friends, and I feel like I finally have a healthy relationship with my job, and I'm able to be successful in a different way, right? Without feeling exhausted at the end of every other day. How could we all do it? Like, they talk about millennial burnout, right? That is so real.
Mhm.
I ignored everything my own body and my own needs had in order to be successful, and then found myself at the top of that mountain, exhausted and questioning, like, "Why did I do it all?"
I know.
Right? Like, what was the value for me other than monetary, right, and my resume?
Mhm.
And I realized, like, it wasn't enough anymore. Because even if I made money, everything else in the world is so unpredictable, especially today in today's climate and politics, right? Like,
Yeah.
so how could I change my path so that I made sure life wasn't happening while I was just planning all the time,
Yeah.
and I was actually being a participant in
Mhm.
it, right?
No, yeah, I think the thing that, like, keeps coming back to me as you're speaking is, like, the word life, and
Mm,
at the end of the day, I remember I was interviewing for a job as a learning and development something, whatever it was, whatever level it was, learning and development at Harry's, the shaving company, the kind of
mm.
the shaving cream and everything, and, I didn't get the job, and one of the things that kept happening to me as I was job hunting is I would get to the end of every possible thing, and one of the things that I would like to say to anybody who's job hunting is, like, at the end of the day, you really have, like, the best chance you're gonna have is 50-50, because at the end of the day, it's gonna be between
So
you
true.
and the person, and so you just can't rely on getting it just because you did a great job, because there could be somebody who has 1 more year of experience, and that's gonna make or break it for them and for you and whatever. And I was
Yeah.
remembering I was at Harry's and I got to the end, they called me, they were like, "We really love you. We wish we could hire 2 people. Like, we think you would be perfect for our culture. Like, we'd love to have you around. We just gonna go with the other person because of this, this, and that." And that was, like, one of my final straws to be like, "Okay,
Mm.
I have to do my own thing. I have to be my own
No.
entrepreneur." And, like, I'm not religious in the slightest, but I said to my friends as a joke, I was like, "God did not put me on this earth to be the learning and development manager at Harry's." And he's like, "That is
Yeah.
not at the end of the day, that is not my purpose. That is not the reason that I exist as a human, and whether or not you believe there needs to be a reason or a purpose or whatever, I know it's not to be a learning and development manager at Harry's." So it really
Yeah.
this, like, direction for me to think about my holistic life and, like, my relationships and my happiness and, like, my direction and my purpose outside of work as well. And that I think is really surprising to me because as I envisioned my life when I was in college, it was so about coming into the office with a suit and a briefcase and, "Oh, you do this, whatever," like, just kinda being like a Miranda Priestley kind of vibe.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just not what my life overall, holistically, ultimately is about.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I'm so grateful for the moments in my life that have knocked me on my butt, because they're reminders of how much we aren't in control of life
Yeah.
and how vulnerable it is,
Mm,
and a lot of the structure and the pressure that we put on ourselves is all a construct anyways, right? And I think, I had gone through similar experiences where when, my previous job ended, I was interviewing with SeatGeek and Uber at the same time, and I was getting to those final rounds, and it did get down to me and one other person in both situations, and, there were other bureaucratic things with those businesses that were coming up, and when I didn't get them, it hit me so hard, and I watch this with my clients too. It hits so hard, and you can't help but have that feeling because it's human,
mhm.
right? But I think changing that position in my head and going, similar to you, like, if the universe didn't wanted to happen, it didn't happen, and that's okay because there's something else out there, right? And waiting for the company that saw me for the greatest value,
Mhm.
I've already experienced what that reward is. Because 'Cause I'll tell you transparently, I've taken many jobs in my career with companies that I felt like I was always starting behind,
Mhm.
that I was always starting with this immense pressure to have to prove myself constantly, right? And then I'd end up surprised when I'd be unhappy because my expectations and reality didn't match, but of course it didn't match
Mhm.
because the interviewing process in itself lacked the authenticity. And,
Right.
there was lessons for me, lessons for those leaders who were interviewing for that role that everybody learned too, and no regrets. It got me to where I am today. But this next chapter, I was so intentional about like, even if my authenticity puts a company off,
Mhm.
that's fine with me. Give me the no, because
Mhm.
if I'm gonna put all this work in and I'm gonna find a place to spend the next few years of my life at, I
Yeah.
want it to be on my terms
Mhm.
that happen to also align with the company, not the other way around.
Yeah. I think I remember being in a mentorship meeting with one of my professors in college, showing her my resume. I think I was applying for a job at Facebook, like a interview, kind of like an internship at Facebook. And I wrote my resume, I'm 20 or something. And she goes, "Yeah, I don't think you're really a shoe in for this job." Like she said that to me. And that's really a great gift. She was like, I don't think this resume is like a shoe in for this job description. And I really appreciated her being like that blunt about it. And then this was the first time I heard somebody say that job hunting is like dating. And
Mm.
funny
Oh,
for a long time, I really resented that a lot because people say everything's like dating, it's whatever. And with job hunting, people say, "Oh, it's like dating because you just have to get the one yes or whatever." Like people just apply it to dating for so many reasons. And then I've been dating more recently, and I realized that job hunting is so much like dating because of the no's. Because you have to be able to get through the no's and not let it crush you. And like somebody's just not
yeah.
the job is just not right for you. It's just not. And if they're gonna go off and be with somebody else, I'm gonna go off and be with somebody else, and it's okay. But like I think that the way that dating is like job hunting the most is you have to just be able to get back up and get back out there.
Yeah, and deal with the heartbreak, right? I think, bringing it to this whole idea of paths,
Yeah.
right? Job paths, acting like ladders, right?
Mhm.
Um, I think when you're younger, you're always shown like, this is what a perfect life would be. This is how life actually is. And it's this swirly thing. And you
Yeah.
look at it and you
Yeah.
laugh and you're like, whatever, because
Yeah.
you're on the other side of actually experiencing it. Now,
Yeah.
being on the other side of experiencing it and talking a lot to my clients who, let's be honest, the last 6 years have been insane. There's a global pandemic.
Yeah.
The economy is behaving in ways many of us have never lived through an experience like,
Mhm.
or it's too reminiscent of other periods like '08, and the economy then. But I think a lot of people come to me and they ask, well, I got laid off from multiple jobs. I've like had so many periods of unemployment in the last like 5 years, and it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. And I go, of course it wasn't your fault. Of course it wasn't your fault. It's the
Mhm.
economy, it's business. And I think it's something to call out twofold. First of all, companies need to be more understanding of non-traditional resumes going forward.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
If you're interviewing with a company that doesn't understand that there's going to be ebbs and flows in the last 6 years, run away.
Yeah.
Run away,
Yeah.
because it's never gonna be a good fit. You're gonna play Goldilocks and
Mhm.
realize that, after heartbreak conversation, those traditionally structured companies,
Mhm.
they want traditionally structured people.
Mhm.
So, it's okay to admit that. Look
Mhm.
for companies that understand that human experience
Mhm.
and are aware enough of the market of the last 6 years that they understand that there's gonna be ebbs and flow. If you're interviewing with a company that doesn't recognize what's been going on in the world in the last 6 years, again, run away.
It will
It's
fail.
a red flag,
Yeah.
because you exist in a bubble that's going to pop at some
Mhm,
point in time.
mhm.
Like companies cannot avoid what's going on in the world. There's too much reach with what's going on,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
think the other side of it is like, don't be afraid, ashamed, or embarrassed. And I know that's a hard thing, but going back to telling your story, right? Those things, you didn't choose them. They happen to you. And you know what's beautiful? You're still here.
Mhm,
You're still fighting for this interview.
mhm,
You're still present, right? So, like, make it part of your story of how resilient
mhm.
you've been, how strong you've been. Because you know what? Again, I've hired thousands of people in the last decade,
Yeah.
and you know what would set a candidate apart from me? Somebody owning that experience and telling me authentically how they became stronger from it versus somebody going, "Oh, yeah, I had some impact the last 3 years, but, anyways." No, lean into it.
Yeah.
Like, business often is uncomfortable. You often have to talk about uncomfortable things through confidence. So, if you can't do that within your own story, right, and own it, then it's not the right company and it's not the right time for you either, right? So, for all of you who are out there going, "How I'm so ashamed of the last 5 years," stop blaming yourself. You didn't do anything wrong, and
Yeah.
own that the last 5 years changed the world, and look for a company that supports your acknowledgement of that, not punishes it.
Mhm. Yeah, I was gonna say I was hoping you would say that because the telling of your story is so important to be able. Yeah, you got laid off or whatever happened, the company shut down or whatever happened, and, like, it's not your fault, but the way you own it and the way you go about telling the story of how you dealt with it is actually so much more powerful than just like, "Oh, yeah, I had this job, then I had this job, then I had this job, then I was laid off, then I had this job, then I had this job," and it's just like, I think that's kind of our big point about storytelling
Mhm.
is, like,
Mhm.
how you tell it is what ultimately lands you where you need to be, and, like, how you search for where you need to be and all of that stuff, which I think takes us really well into our next episode, which is all about really being you and versus kind of being the job. And I think we've touched on some of these topics so far, but, like, I think it's gonna be a really great finale for our series. So I'm really excited to get into it. Do you have anything else to say before we hop off?
No, I've had so much fun. I look forward to this final chapter we're going to discuss and like very real things that you can do to start understanding how to be you, not your job.
I think that's gonna be the best. Alright, we'll see you next week. My name's Ben,
My name's Alyssa.
and we will see you next week.